Feudalism, the European medieval system that tends to dominate this era. That's our subject for today. How it came to be and why people joined into this system. We're not going to get into the details of exactly what it was and how it worked and show how it code. I leave that to other sources. Today, we need to deal with the development. Now, most people start feudalism with Charlemagne, Charles the Great, if you will. And although there is reason to accept that his creation of his empire was kind of the start or the development of feudalism, the story is much more complicated. To actually define this society, you have this basic stratified system. You have kings, you have nobles, you have knights, you have peasants, but the peasants support everything. Essentially, the nobles own all the land, and the peasants work all the land, paying a percentage of their food up, what we would call taxes. The peasants pay taxes to the knights pay taxes to the nobles pay taxes up to the king. All of this, of course, coming from the peasants. The odd thing that we have here is that the peasants voluntarily become part of this system, many of them accepting serfdom, which physically bounds them and their descendants to the land. Why would people do this? Why would people actually accept this? And the whole story here is one of protection, because the king provides protection to the nobles, who provides protection to the knights, who provides protections to the peasants, all based on this loyalty oath system. So essentially it's like this, if you want to think about it. Let's say that you are a peasant and there is a thief in the field somewhere who robs you. Well, you can go to your knight and you can ask him for help. He, as he is bound to do, will seek out and search out that person and find them for you. Now, if when he finds them, this is not just a single kind of thief, it's a marauder, it's a group. He can call on his noble to send other knights that are loyal to this noble, who will then help him root out this group of marauders. Problem: if this knight actually encounters this group of marauder, if this group of knights count this group of marauders, and it is not just some general thieves, these people are the vanguard of an invading army. This knight will tell his noble, and this noble will go to his king, and the king will call on all of these nobles to bring all of their knights to battle against this invading army. It is a mutual protection system that the peasants are supportive of. But the question, again, is why are things so bad that these peasants are willing to subject them to this? And really, the basic story comes down to these guys. Now, we've already dealt with the Vikings. We're not going to go into all of this, but these guys are the crux of the story. Between about 750 to 790, all the way through to 1100, these people are going to dominate, using their ships, exploring all over Europe, up every river, along every coast, invading constantly. This boogeyman-esque society is going to strike such fear in this society that people are going to be willing to join this system in order to achieve some kind of peace. But there's more to the story still, because when you look at this feudal system and you look at the core of it, which are these loyalty oaths, what you see is that this is remarkably similar to the loyalty oaths that jarls in Scandinavia, think local tribal leaders, if you will, demand of their people. In fact, the entire Scandinavian Norse Viking system is based on loyalty oaths to the jarls. And this actually makes sense when we look at a larger map, because the Vikings were not just invaders, they actually settled. All these areas you see colored on the map are areas where these Norsemen, if you will go out and actually settle to a great extent. And therefore, that culture is going to be embedded. That culture of loyalty oaths to their leaders is going to be embedded within European society. So when we get to somewhere between 900 and 1000, what we will see are these formalized large kingdoms who have a great deal of power. How did you jump from a system in Scandinavia where you have smaller loyalty oaths to local tribal leaders called jarls, all the way to these large kingdoms based on feudal system? The crux of that story, pretty much the heart of that story, involves Vikings again. Most of you have seen this image before. This, of course, is the famous Bayeux Tapestry. Um, and this is depicting the Battle of Hastings, which is in 1066. Now, the thing is, you're like, oh, well, William the Conqueror actually kind of launches from Normandy and invades southern England. This is really a story of French invading kind of Anglo-Saxon England. But the Normans are not French. The Normans, and William the Conqueror himself, is a Viking. In 911, the King of France will actually cede the entire northern part of his kingdom to a Viking named Rollo in exchange to prevent future Viking raids into his territory. So, what you have when we get to this fateful year in 1066, you have two Viking fleets. Harold Hardrada will have a massive fleet in Norway. He is kind of the new king of Norway, if you believe there is such a thing, who will arrive in the north of England. Of course, King Harold the Saxon will follow out of London. He will go all the way up. He will defeat and repel this invasion very successfully at Stamford Bridge. But at the moment of his victory, if you will, he receives word that William of Normandy, another Viking, has launched an invasion into his south. He will turn his army around, march them all the way back south, and engage immediately in another battle, one he is destined to lose. His army has already been kind of destroyed by defending this other Viking fleet. Okay, so what does all of this happen to do with feudalism? The story we have here is what happens next. How William the Conqueror, or William of Normandy, actually divides up what is now England. He slowly kind of builds, taking more and more parts of England. And every time he does that, he rewards those who fight with him. Those warriors who come from Normandy will be given different parcels of land. And when they invade the southern part of England, these individual warriors are given various pieces of land. When they invade eastern England, kind of north of London, again, each of these warriors are given various pieces of land as you move to the west and as you move to the north. And so what happens is, by rewarding these warriors, now knights, now actually nobles because they own land, he is actually distributing their wealth across the entirety of his new kingdom. Which means, one, these guys are going to continue to fight for their king because every time he conquers something else, they get more land, right? But two, if this land is ever attacked, his knights are going to be willing to actually fight for his land. Because if the north is attacked, they have land up there and they have a vested interest. If Normandy is attacked, they have land down there, they have a vested interest. So he's created a system where nobles are going to stay loyal and they are going to come to his aid at any moment. But there's a little more to the story, because as this story expands and his descendants will conquer other areas such as Wales and parts of Scotland and Ireland and much of southern France, these new knights are going to be given other pieces of land in these other areas as well. Now you have a series of nobles or knights, people who were once warriors, who now will actually have land. And this attempt to have their land spread out through all of these areas maintains not just that they will continue fighting for him or his descendants. In this case, the map I'm referring to is what Henry II achieved in 1133 to 1189. But also these people who have a vested interest in the success of the entire kingdom. Now, this is the way the British kings do it. That will be a little different in the Germanic states, a little different in Spain and Hungary and Poland, but at the same token, it is all this. Mutual protection agreements supported by the peasants and structured systems in place that ensure that aid is brought when it needs it. That is feudalism.